Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews, and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete Tigers.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast. I first got talking to Jay Lee when we shared some messages on Facebook regarding glass rods. And after chatting some more, it became apparent he had a really impressive fly fishing CV, from his wonderful fly tying to getting qualified as an instructor and how he got into fly fishing, and also our mutual love of fishing in the American Midwest too. I wanted to learn some more, and so he's agreed to be a guest on the podcast today, which I'm really excited about. Jay, it's great to have you here today. Is all good with you?
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we're doing fine. You know, very weird period of life, so to speak, with the COVID and all. But yeah, we're doing fine.
Good.
Thanks.
Good.
How are you?
I'm always good. I'm catching a few fish here and there, so that's all I need. My needs are always simple ones. So
well, that's better because I haven't fished for almost 2 years now, so it's getting itchy. Here and there.
Wow, you're dealing with that incredibly well. And why is well? Let's start with whereabouts are you actually based, and is that having an impact on why you're unable to fish right now?
Yeah, I'm based in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. As you know, we don't have mountains, so to speak, with clear trout streams and so on. Well, that's what I like the most, fishing in streams and rivers. And we got some stocked lakes and ponds, but well, that's not really my type of fishing. Well, you can do a lot of fishing around in Holland, but I've done it so often when I was young, and I just can't pick up my rod and go outside, you know, because it's not the type of fishing I want. So, well, I'll just wait until the COVID is a bit more settled down, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, well, best of luck with that. And it strikes me that although you say that about fishing, obviously, I guess you've got pike, perch, and other species that you can go chase on.
Ruts and roaches. Yeah. Caught a ton of them.
Yeah.
When I was young. Yeah.
But there is, it seems to me, quite a hardcore of fly anglers over there, and I think of yourself, I think of Jeroen, who writes for us, Hans van Klinken, obviously Nico, who's a mutual friend as well from Yamami Rods. There is quite still a hardcore of fly anglers there, and I'm sure there's many I've missed, but there is, isn't there?
Well, it's pretty remarkable that such a small country has a lot of well-known fly fishermen, fly tyers. I once asked the Dutch Federation of Fly Fishers, how many fly fishers do you think we got in Holland? Well, the estimates, they went from a couple of thousands to up to about 7,000-8,000. But, well, obviously not all of them are so fanatic as some of us. But, yeah, I think there's I think a couple of hundreds who are really hardcore. And they just, they seem to fish all day and every day. But, yeah, it's really, really remarkable, such a small country with a lot of well-known anglers and tyers.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talking you, but you mentioned tyers there, and you know I've been admiring the flies that you tie as well, and we'll come on to how that story began. But it was a post you made the other day that really interests me, and it was a fly called a humpy, which I'm sure many of the listeners will know. I don't mean the CDC humpy, I mean the one with elk hair, etc. That is, I class personally as more of a Midwestern sort of pattern. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, because I first sort of used that I think it was in Colorado. I first bought a pattern and used it and caught some fish, and then subsequently I transferred it over to here with sort of kind of okay, I would say okay stroke limited success, that in bigger patterns for the yellow underbody worked kind of for mayfly, and then I found that I could buy some with a black underbody, and it worked in smaller sizes as a good terrestrial pattern. Do you find that is one of those sort of classic patterns. Do you use it on the streams that you fish, and have you had success with it? It's just, and what I mean, and what I wanted to ask as well, is that it's a technically demanding fly to tie as well, isn't it?
Yeah. The story is the humpy doesn't really replicate anything specific. It's just a general pattern which could be used for a terrestrial, for instance, a beetle, but it can also be a caddis or even a mayfly. Well, my personal story goes back to the mid-1980s, and I was a member of a fly fishing club here locally, and we used to have a little library of videotapes. Well, mostly were, of course, copied videotapes, which were terrible, but they were still watchable. And I watched one of those videos. Jack Dennis, a famous American fly fisherman and fly shop owner back then, and he made a video on Western trout flies, many of the famous Western flies from the Rocky Mountains. And he showed how to tie a humpy, and I was really fascinated, and I tried to tie one of those too, but of course, as you told earlier, it's quite a difficult fly to master. First of all, you need the right type of hair, deer hair or elk hair, and the proportions are really critical to have a nice looking humpy. Well, turn the clock to these days, it's still one of my favorite ties, flies to tie. And I must tell that the fly works, I think, personally the best in some rough, faster waters, not the Spring Creek or type of chalk stream like streams in what you got in the UK. And basically it's a fly that imitates everything but also nothing. So you really have to look for this type of water you want to fish. So basically rough water. And it flows really well. So, it's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it. It's actually, it inspired me to think about digging mine out. And I think for a dry dropper setup, it would be a great fly to have on the top. Like you say.
Oh, great. Yeah. Great fly to,
Yeah, it represents so many different things.
Nowadays, the humpy is really popular, for instance, in New Zealand. A lot of fly fishermen have a lot of success there. And, they got specific variations of humpy. I think one of the videos I watched from, what are those guys in the US who went with a club to, club of friends to Argentina and New Zealand.
Yeah,
I think it was called the Trout Bum Diaries.
Yep.
Remember those?
Yep, absolutely. I bought those
and
DVDs.
Those guys, I watched them endlessly, and I think they made a humpy with a wrappings of a candy, a blue shiny wrapping from a candy, and I think it imitated a certain fly which had a shimmering bluish shine on it. So you can tie it with any color or underbody you like, and it's not a real pattern to imitate something, but it's whatever you use it, and you just try it, and if it works, then it works. If it doesn't, just use something different for the body.
Yeah, I've used them as well in the US, I think, with red below them as well as the underbody as well, and that has been always
right.
Yeah, that worked pretty well. But yeah, that's inspired me. And if anyone's listening hasn't used a humpy before, have a look for them, because they are a really cool looking fly. And
I think they work. By the way, I think they would work better if they got all bitten and torn apart. All the pieces of hair will be sticking out, and that seems to work. Like legs or whatever, it moves. So some certain form of fluttering fly or something like that, maybe. Well, I'll have to ask a fish if I catch one, but I think it works the best on some faster waters.
Yeah, absolutely. And where the streams where I fish at home are similar to that. And I guess it would be an interesting alternative to something like a stimulator, actually. Very buoyant, dry fly. And I would almost call it in that sort of family of flies, although I know the stimulator's tied to represent the big stoneflies that you get in the American Midwest, but that sort of big buoyant fly that you could use as part of a dry dropper, which I've done in the UK and caught fish.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've gone down, as I said, when we talked off mic, that I tend to go down all sorts of rabbit holes and wormholes when we're talking, but you said that you hadn't fished for a little while now. And so where you're based in Holland, it sounds to me as though rivers are really your thing. Where is it that you like to head to when you're able to, and you're able to hit a river? Where do you go? Which would be really what you would consider your home water?
Well, home water is of course a bit difficult in Holland. But I think the past 20 years, my favorite area to fish have been southern Germany and Austria, particularly, which is, basically the Alps. The reason I like to fish there is it's really, really beautiful. I love fishing those gin clear waters, and it's a lot less crowded. Basically, one of the reasons I think is the ticket system. There are only limited tickets available per day. Also, the prices, well, it's not cheap, but it's I think that's certain limitations to have a lot of people on the water, which I experienced way back in the border rivers near the Netherlands and Germany. And basically that's my home waters. Every now and then I try to go somewhere else. Montana is one of my favorite destinations. And recently I explored some rivers in, little streams in the Spanish Pyrenees, which are also wonderful. And I think if I had to go out fishing for a couple of days, I'll grab the car and drive down to southern Germany and Austria.
And how long does it take you to get there, Jay? And how would you describe, I know you said they're gin clear streams. Are they big rivers? How do you set up for those? Are you using a longer light line rod? How are you tackling these sorts of rivers? It's about a 9, 10, 11 hour drive down there. I love driving those big German highways, so it's a real joy to drive down there. But I like to fish particularly more the smaller streams. You know, there are large rivers which are really famous, like the Gemundetraun, famous because of Roman Mose made a couple of videos on them. But I tend to like the smaller mountain streams, which is really isolated and really secluded. And I love the intimacy of it by fishing alone or with a buddy together. And I like to fish them with smaller, shorter rods, particularly, typically about 7 to 8 feet long. Light rods, using light nymphs, like dry flies. I love fishing with terrestrials like hoppers and beetles. And that's my kind of fishing, and that's what I generally do. And I've been doing that a lot the past 20 years. And there's so much more to discover, and I think I could fish the rest of my life there and still haven't seen half of it. Yeah. And when you go down there, do you head for a couple of days, a week, or what do you do? Do you manage to pack it in over a weekend and head down on a Friday night, or how do you tend to plan it?
Well, before I had a family, I used to go for a full week, but that's generally a bit too long. I think I started to try out about 3-4 days, and that kind of worked really good for me. When you're fishing for a week, the last 2 days, you've caught a lot of fish. You're a bit fed up with fishing, so to speak. So, which is it's a lot of money. I mean, you have to pay a lot of gas, staying in hotels, and all the tickets for fishing. So generally, I take trips of 3-4 days.
Yeah, fantastic. And it sounds
that's enough to leave Hungary. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And I guess it's sort of pocket water fishing. And if it is, that sounds perfect to me too.
Yeah, it's generally, I think the width is about 20 feet, 25 feet at the max. And I love just crawling and hunting for those fish. Really amazing.
Cool. What are you catching there, Jay? Is it rainbows, browns, brooks? What are you catching mainly?
Generally, rainbows and browns. There are some streams where they got a decent amount of native brooks, even graylings, which are diminishing more and more the past, let's say, 20, 15 years. But generally, rainbows and browns. Yeah, those quarry. And I have seen a couple of perches in some parts. But I think the colder upper stretches are too cold for those coarse type of fish. So generally rainbows, browns, and they don't grow typically very big. I think 15, 16 inches is quite a nice fish. Generally they're about 12 to 14 inches. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And are you getting good hatches down there?
It's nice on. I just planned a trip, and of course, we never know what kind of weather we will be seeing there. But generally, when I'm there, there's not a particular hatch going on because it's kind of high and very, very, very limited season for the fish to grab their meal. So I rarely see real hatches, and basically those hatches are very short. And often I also see caddis hatches later at night, but when you're high in the mountains, you don't want to be hanging down there until midnight because I'll never find my way back home. So, yeah.
Excellent. And so, we've sort of kind of got around that you're not living in a fly fishing hotbed, but you travel to these wonderful streams to go catch them. So how did you discover fly fishing? Where did that come into your life, and how did that begin for you?
Well, it's, I think, just like typical fly fishermen. They started when they started fishing with little bobbers and worms and that kind of stuff. As long as I can remember, I fished with a pole and a bobber. And I started to reading books in the libraries about fishing beyond the bobber fishing, and of course there was spin fishing and there was fly fishing, and that really looked very interesting. And I must say that back those days you don't have YouTube, and you just had to look for particular books in English. And I ran into a couple of books, most of them from the UK, I think. And one day I was looking outside our house, and I saw this guy suddenly waving with a rod, and I knew exactly that was a fly fisherman. So I ran outside, and I tagged along with this man, and probably he was quite annoyed, but it was like I was like a little puppy next to him, and we started talking, and he lived not too far away from me, so he invited me to come over and show some of his flies, and that's how I got interested. I started to save up some pocket money to buy a fly rod, and the rest is history, so to speak. That was I think it was in 1992 when I was 14. And I've been fishing ever since, only with a fly rod, basically.
Nice. And do you remember that process? Because obviously you're a qualified instructor, but do you remember that process of learning to cast, where you went, and that first fish on a fly rod? Do you remember that vividly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we didn't have instructors or even books, decent books on fly casting. I mean, there were a couple of books with drawings how to wave a rod, but I just tried it on my own, and it was horrible. I still remember fixing up all the knots into my leaders and tippet and losing flies all the time, and it really annoyed me. And I did try to look up with friends who were also fly fishing. One of my high school teachers, a drawing teacher, turned out to be a fly fisherman. So I, rather than doing our work in the class, I just talked endlessly with him about fly fishing. And along the way, books came along with fly fishing and fly casting. And I really got interested in casting. Not to speak to distance casting as these days, but casting well, not to get tangled all the time, and getting your fly to the fish as well as possible. And I eventually the fly casting instructor program from the FFF, the American FFF Federation, came, and at the Dutch Fly Fair there was this possibility to get one of those certificates. And one of my heroes, Mel Krieger, was the person who ran the program. I mean, I watched him a couple of videos, but it's really amazing to see him just in front of you, explaining how to cast well. And he said, "Why don't you just join the program?" And I did it with my fishing buddy back then. And after the exam, he said, "You passed." I said, "Okay, what does it mean? You're an instructor now." Okay. Well, casting well is one thing, but giving good instruction is a whole different ball game. I found out, and these days there are a lot of good casters. One of my favorite casting instructors is Chris Rones, which you did a podcast recently. A really nice guy, and I think the real essence of good instruction is keeping it easy. And often I see people giving instructions or read in magazines and books. I mean, there are books that's 3 inches thick about casting. I mean, we could make it into a rocket science, obviously, but casting, making it easy to understand, that's I think the essence of real good casting instruction.
Yeah, I'm with.
That's what I try to.
I'm with you 100% on that.
Also with tying.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. And I was having a conversation with a fellow instructor, although I'm not instructing anymore, but I had how the process of teaching, and particularly, we used to have days where we would sell a day to a beginner who'd never picked up a fly rod before. Yeah. Now, when you first meet them, that they are hanging on to everything you say because they know it's a lesson. And so I diverted away, and I'm exactly like you, that I much prefer to keep it simplistic, yet explain everything about loop formation once they've done it. And I found that the traditional route of talking about, this is the rod, we have different rods for this, we have different fly lines for this, we have different, I'd forget about that. And I would get them immediately saying, right, okay, in a relaxed situation, thinking about the movement and pantomiming the cast without the rod in their hand, and say, look, it will become a little bit more difficult if you over rotate your wrist. And so as a beginner, as instructors, we know that is probably the most common fault that a beginner's going to have. And I'm not a subscriber of people putting rod butts in the sleeve or anything, because I want to teach them to cast.
In the sleeves, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get through the lesson. I want to teach them how to cast properly. So I found that if I was teaching them probably as a beginner, one of the more important things first off, that would go in. And like you say, I think sometimes it can be easy to go down a particular well-trodden route, and it will work, don't get me wrong, but there are situations where suddenly the pupil, before you've even started picking up a fly rod with them, has been overloaded with information. They've lost that opportunity to get the basics in at the very beginning, so they hold on to that bit. I'm getting the sense that's probably how you do things yourself.
Well, first of all, I think it should be fun to cast a fly rod. That's where it starts. I mean, if it's not fun, why should you put any effort in it, or even buy a fly rod? So, I think that's the first thing I try to bring along. Have a lot of fun with people. I mean, you won't be a PGA master golfer after a couple of clinics, so. It takes time to get the feeling of the fly rod, and everybody has a different body, so they have some different physical limitations, so to speak. But first of all, it should be fun, and it's not a problem if you don't got it after the first 20 minutes. It should use it as a starters and have fun. And along the way, you'll pick up different techniques which you can master over time. So, it's basically just have fun, and let's see how it goes there from that.
Cool. While we're on the casting aspects of it, it would be rude for me not to go down the rod route as well. And like I said in the introduction, I know we shared some messages about glass rods, and I know you're a fan of those as well. And like me too, you love fishing bamboo rods as well, don't you? And how did that part start for you?
Yeah. Let's start with, I'm a real fly rod geek. I really love those different types of materials, different length, different weight. Bamboo has been always fascinated me since I started reading about fly fishing. You know, sometimes you see a picture in a book with a bamboo rod, and you start asking around, where do I get those? Where do I buy those? And they said, well, you just start saving now, and maybe in 10 years you might be able to buy one. And I think I started reading about bamboo specifically around 2010. I think it's about more than 10 years, and it's kind of difficult to find fly fishermen who has a decent collection of bamboo rods. I mean, that's one real difficulty living in Holland. I mean, in the US, where I have a couple of friends who are real bamboo addicts, they got a whole bunch of people and friends who have all different kind of rods, and you can arrange meetings and start casting each other's rods and see what's it like. So that's kind of difficult here. And I remember a little meeting in Switzerland. I went on my way to Italy on holiday with my girlfriend back then, and I was amazed how many different kind of rods, bamboo rods and actions you got there. And eventually I bought a bamboo rod from a friend, Tom Moren, which is quite a nice rod. And I just really fell in love, and I really enjoy the slower action. I mean, it's a whole different ball game compared to all the fast rods these days from graphite. And along the way I thought I would stay with one rod, but eventually it became a collection, and I thought, oh, this is getting out of hand. So I sold off a couple of again, and along the way came fiberglass, which is a similar kind of action like bamboo, a bit slower, more moderate action, and a bit more retro, so to speak. I really love those 70s made rods from that period, and those are really bamboo-like, a bit slower, more relaxed. And yeah, that's what I like about these two materials. It's not so performance focused rods. It's you can cast a long distance. That's no problem. But fishing like 10 feet away from the fish, you don't need a rocket launcher to get the fly over there. So yeah, these rods are pretty nice. Also fishing real close, and that's why I like them.
Yeah, and there is something. I think I've used the term before, and I probably somebody much smarter than I's written it as well. That it does feel a little bit more organic, I guess, but it's kind of cool as well. And do you sense, I'm relatively new to social media in the last 2-3 years, something like that, but I've also felt this year, and I don't know if it's something to do with lockdown, I don't know, I've pushed in my small tiny way the way I like to fish a little bit, and then as a result, and I like how we've got talking has been that way. Do you get a sense that more and more people are looking to experience either glass or bamboo rods more recently?
Yeah, I think you're right, Pete. We got a lot of more bamboo makers than ever before. Some say that the golden age of bamboo was around 1930s, way back, with all those famous rod making companies. But I think today is the golden age. There are so many people making bamboo rods. Most of them are just hobby builders, but there are a couple of full professional builders, of course. But we got all the information available on the internet. We got the best tools. We got the best glues. I mean, there are a lot of people fishing bamboo. I think one reason that bamboo is getting popular is how fast can a rod be? I mean, what's the next fast rod you need to get? The rods are getting faster and faster, and some people are just maybe wondering themselves, why am I launching 80 feet fly distance on a parking lot while I'm fishing, let's say, 20 to 30 feet in a small stream? It makes no sense, getting one of those rocket launchers in one of those fishing in a small stream. And maybe there people are just looking for a more slower, relaxed way of fishing. Take your time and enjoy the surroundings, listen to the birds. And you don't need to catch your personal record every time you fish. A small fish on a light rod it's a joy. So I think one of those reasons is people are just so to speak fed up with all the fast rods these days. The fiberglass has always been a little community on itself. I found out the past 15 years. And yeah, those people are just like, those Harley Davidson fans. They just roam around on their leisure, and they don't care whatever is happening outside. And those people, they're just relaxed people, and I like them. And eventually, you see the past 10, 12 years, small little builders picking up fiberglass blanks from little companies, and they started to build one of those and giving them to friends to try out. And there are a couple of real good fiberglass manufacturers, little builders, like our friend Nico from Yamame, of course. I'm a fan of Chris Barclay from America. From North Carolina. You got, of course, Grey Wolf, also from the States. Dusty Smith from Montana, Livingston Rod Company. And Mike McFarland, who is a manufacturer of fly blanks as well as a fly rod manufacturer. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of fly fishing companies these days making wonderful fiberglass fly rods. And I'm also a fan of those, unfortunately, because the collection is getting out of hand again. But I also love those delicate fly rods.
Absolutely. I'm with you. And rewinding to bamboo very quickly as well, that's an impressive first rod. I was very fortunate to have a Tom Moran as well, which was a fantastic, and I got to spend a day with him on the river one time, which was fabulous fun. It was
nice.
It was so good I didn't even fish, and I was on the Froome with John Aplin and John Grindle as well. I was writing something about it, and it's just to get to spend some time with him was absolutely fabulous. So impressive one. Coming back onto glass rods as well.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, you should be. It was just one of those really special days that it was a complete fluke. He was there, and John happened to say, "Oh, Tom Moran's staying here at the moment," and wow, and it was absolutely fantastic. But moving on to the glass rods, do you think it is now that we've got, I think it's F glass, S glass, that slightly, in my humble opinion, more usable, slightly more friendly, slightly more mainstream material has made that more accessible and more interesting to a wider group of people as well?
Well, I think partly, yeah. There are a couple of companies, fly rod companies, who always had fiberglass in their collection. Scott is one of those who always had a list of fiberglass rods in their list. A couple of companies like Thomas and Thomas, they sometimes have a collection of fiberglass rods. Orvis recently also started to manufacture fiberglass rods again. While they used to have a lot of different models back in the, let's say, the late 1950s, 70s, and early 1980s. Well, there are a couple of other companies like Reddington, which I think that's called Butterscotch.
Butterstick.
Series. And Butterstick. Yeah, right. Sorry. I was too... let's see. There are a couple of companies which make affordable. Echo, I think Echo makes a couple of affordable fly rods, fiberglass, and I think that's a way that people get in touch with their first fiberglass fly rods. And I think it's getting more momentum because they're getting more and more mainstream, so to speak. I think one of the larger companies these days is Swift with their Epic fly rods and blanks. I think they're more mainstream. They're not so slow as the other makers' rods. So that's a more easier first step coming from a fast graphite rod. So I think there are more and more people enjoying fiberglass rods. And recently, I think Red Truck from the United States, they have a very, very nice and affordable series of fiberglass rods. So, I think it's getting more popular these days.
Yeah, it's great to hear. So, and I'm sensing that, like I said, on this segment of it, that there seems to be more interest. I'm seeing people asking me about bamboo rods the whole time, and I'm fishing mine pretty much exclusively. I'm really enjoying it. And Luke, we did a podcast, Luke Bannister is building me a 3-piecer so that I can travel with it. And this is a wonderful segue that's just suddenly come up. The reason I wanted that was that I was hoping to head out to Montana in very early October. And obviously that's not going to happen now with my buddy Ray. But this brings me nicely on because, it strikes me that you're not afraid to travel to fish, and you have, I guess it's fair to say, a love affair with Montana and the American Midwest. How did that start, and where did that come about for you? Yeah.
Montana is one of my favorite destinations indeed. Again, we start back like in the early 1980s. One of those few books I found in the library And there's always a section with where can you fish outside of Holland, Germany, and of course Montana is one of those destinations with wonderful backgrounds and a lot of amazing scenery out there. As a matter of fact, I started to look for information, and of course, the only way back then was reaching out to other people who are more experienced in terms of traveling and so on. And I asked one of those people about some friends I could write to. And I started writing with a couple of them and eventually ended up with two people, one living in Montana and one living in Idaho. And we wrote endless letters. I mean, these days it's a lot more easier to communicate, but those days, you wrote 2, 3, 4 pages of handwritten letters and you wait 6 months and finally a letter returns. And we did that for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And one day, one of those pen pals wrote me, "Why don't you come over?" Well, let me have a look. And back then, getting a flight ticket, it was quite an adventure. I mean, if you come to one of those traveling agencies, you say, "I want to go to Montana in Helena," and they start asking you, "Where the heck is Montana?" And that was my first trip in 1992. I still remember sitting in a plane in a stopover, and I was looking outside the window, and we were supposed to take off, and all of a sudden this little Rolly comes along, and I was looking closer, and I think I saw my bag, my duffel, with all my fishing gear. So I was glad that we didn't take off yet. So and I also remember landing on the airport of Helena. I think it was around 11 p.m. Pitch dark outside, and I was waiting in the hall outside. I mean, it's a real tiny airport. I mean, it's like, I don't know, a large cabin, so to speak. And I was wondering, really, maybe this was all a joke. I mean, there is no Don Richards out there writing to me. And all of a sudden, in the distance, I saw this old man walking towards me. And I still have contact with Don, and I think he's in the almost 90 years, I think. And we still have contact. And I've been every couple of years I've been back to Montana, and I really love the area. I mean, rent a car and you can drive endlessly along those mountain hill roads, and it's one of the most amazing places on earth.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned about the airports. I've not been to Helena before, but I've been into Bozeman and Missoula. And Bozeman, the moment you arrive and get into the arrival lounge, there's trout there's pictures of trout, there's casts of trout on the wall, and you kind of feel like you've almost come home, don't you, to where you should be. Yeah. You should be. So that first river and that first trip, where was it that you were fishing? Just so our listeners, if they have dreamed of fishing in Montana or if they fished there, so we can hopefully paint a picture of where you were and how the fishing was.
Yeah. Well, I had a whole list of rivers I wanted to fish that summer. And that was, all the famous rivers like the Madison, the Missouri, the Bighorn, the Yellowstone River, and I think I had a couple of more. And Don said, "Let's start with one." And I arrived at 11 p.m. and I think we left for the Yellowstone Park around 4, I think. So I just had a little nap for 2 hours at the most, and we started driving down there. And back there, the Yellowstone River was crowded, but I don't think it's as crowded as now. And it was amazing. I mean, the wildlife and the surroundings. It was just jaw-dropping with all the wild animals around. And yeah, I mean, back those days, the cutthroats in the rivers were plentiful. I mean, you could catch 30, 40, 50 a day, no problem. And well, these days it's a complete different story, of course, because of the lake trout eating all the cutthroats in the lake. And I think, let's see, we fished the Yellowstone, we fished in the park, I think the Slough Creek, and what is it? There's another one up north. And yeah, also we fished the Madison, the Missouri River above Helena, which is near Craig, pretty popular these days. Well, I only had about 2 weeks staying there, so we couldn't travel to Bighorn, for instance, which is about, I think, 8-9 hours of drive. And he told me that Bighorn is a typical river with you really need a drift boat, and we didn't have one ourselves. And I mean, I was still a college student, so my financial possibilities were pretty limited. So, well, after this first trip, I told myself I'll be back in a couple of years, and yeah, I think I went there about 7 times now, I think, since then. And yeah, if you ask me where do you want to go tomorrow, I'll just hop in the plane and fly to Montana, no problem.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it's funny you mentioned Slough Creek. That is one of the, I say the worst kept secrets, that everyone says walk 2 fields and then you'll get into the cuts around there. And everyone knows that. You mentioned the other streams. I fished the Gibbon, the Gardner, a number of other ones as well. Obviously, there's the Fire. Yeah. Is it the Fire Hole as well? Hole. Yeah. Which sometimes gets shut down, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And those.
Yeah. Gets too hot.
Yeah. And it is just everything you would think. The amazing thing, and I'm sure you'll agree, isn't it? The amount of fish per mile is phenomenal. And I think the Yellowstone is something like...
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like 6,000 per mile or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I haven't counted all the last couple of fish down there, but, you know, it's... they tell me, 3,000 fish per mile. I mean, then you should be catching every fish every couple of minutes. But it's obviously they're concentrated in certain parts of the river. But the amount of fish you could catch is it's crazy. Yeah. And of course, it also depends on the weather and the conditions. I mean, it's not that you just toss out a fly and a couple of fish just race to your fly to grab it. It's not like that, but it's you really also need to know where to fish.
Yeah,
I really found out that the real popular spots. I mean, it's doable, but it's not the best kind of fishing you expect down there.
Yeah,
so you have to go a bit off the track. Like let's say 30 minutes from the famous parking lots, and you start to fish pretty alone, rather than I've seen areas where there were fishermen like every 20 yards there was a fisherman standing next to each other. It could be fun, but it's not the best experience, obviously.
That was the thing I was going to say, was that if you're prepared to walk, and it doesn't need to be a long distance. And I think it is a function, isn't it, of having so many fish per mile that you don't actually need to go that far, but be prepared to do it. But my friend Ray and I do the reverse psychology as well, in that we fished the Bitterroot in the town water on a Sunday, and we worked on the basis that it was the weekend and everybody would be heading out. So we'll fish the town water. I think it was in Florence or Lolo. I can't remember where it was now. And it was empty. And we had it to ourselves. And actually, It was the last day of that particular trip. And there was no one around. And I'd caught a fish, let's say it was about 3 o'clock, and I just cut off my flies. I looked down the river and I thought, wow, this is the Bitterroot. It doesn't get any better. I don't need anything more. and it was fantastic. And like,
yeah, just sit,
yeah,
sit on the shore and just enjoy the surrounding. And yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, and just the whole experience of being there and walking in the fly shops, and like you say, the Madison, particularly, I like fishing around Ennis, and that was another place we were heading to. You walk along the town there.
Oh, great!
Yeah, and everyone's in fishing gear, and you just feel part of a community for a few days or the amount of time that you're there, but you feel you've landed amongst your people, don't you?
Well, if I look back through my fishing diaries I wrote back then, I think I spent half the time in fly shops. Spots like Ennis, there's like a fly shop every three houses between. So just go one in out, and the next fly shop, and you're in awe with all the stuff hanging on the wall, all the different fly rods, flies, reels, you name it, and. Yeah, it's part of the fun. Just visiting all those fly shops you just read in magazines or you heard from friends. I mean, I've seen a couple of fly rods here, fly shops here in Europe, but the atmosphere, the people around. It's really really fun just to hang around and talk to those people who work there. Yeah. One of the famous fly shop in Montana is called the George Anderson's Yellowstone Angler. I think you heard of it from the shootouts he's been doing the past 5-7 years. They have become pretty famous with their fly rod shootouts. And I still remember we went down to the park and we drove past Livingston, and I did have a wading. Waders, one of those plastic waders where you sweat like a pig, so to speak. And we didn't have a fly shop with boots in my size, so I told Donson I need to get a boot for my waders. So we stopped at George's shop, and it was around I think 6 a.m. and he said, "Oh, he's open," and really, 6 a.m. in the morning, the shop was open. And we kept in touch ever since. And we fished a couple of years ago together with George. And one of those moments you just have fond memories.
Absolutely. You'll probably or may not notice, I was trying to point it to you while you were speaking, the T-shirt I'm wearing is Yellowstone Angler, funnily enough. So I know that store well. And, what I love about, and what I was, going to say was that when you walk in there, whoever's behind there says, "Hey, where you fishing? How's the fishing going?" And they immediately engage you and feel as you do. And I fish with guides and been lucky enough to say, "Come on, when you finish, let's go fishing," and stuff like that. And it just is that whole culture of it that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
So when you land in Montana, if there were one stream for our listeners, if there was one stream that I said to you, you've got one more trip to Montana, where would it be that you actually headed?
Oh boy. If you got locals who show you spots, they take you to spots where nobody has written about. There's no reviews or no descriptions of them. I think I would be one of those little tributaries of the Yellowstone River. Smaller ones. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but it's one of those smallest tributaries which I really enjoy. They're full of cutthroats, gin clear, and up in the hills. Yeah, I think that will be my final destination in Montana.
Nice.
I mean, those big rivers, famous rivers, they're great, but these days it's really crowded. I mean. It's every 5 minutes there's drift boat coming down. I mean, I think that's a way to enjoy the fishing. Sure, there's no problem, but it's crowded, and I must say that it also depends on which time of the year. I think September, October is less crowded than, let's say, in July, August, which is during the summer holiday period. But it's it also depends on the period of the year, and I'd go around September. You know, the background is changing because of the season, and it's wonderful to see all those colors in the trees, and just together with a buddy. And I found out that I have never bought a bear spray all those times, because I was also always hanging along with buddies, but I was amazed that the couple of times I went out there alone, I didn't run into any bears or so on. But it's pretty crazy that you could have been in danger. But you know, it's a quite different environment. I mean, here in Europe, you go up in the hills, and the biggest animal you'll probably see is maybe a deer or something, but nothing dangerous. In Montana, you could just run into a grizzly one day, and it's something you have to remember when you go out there.
Yeah,
make sure that you got somebody with bear spray, or get one in the fly shops.
Yeah, good point. I know funnily enough, I was having this conversation with somebody just the other day, and they mentioned about bears, and I remember I was fishing, I think it was the Bitterroot outside, it was the town water at Hamilton, I think it was, and there was a black bear. It was one of those really funny ones that we walked into the fly shop, and I always try and buy something if I'm going to ask a question, so I bought some bits and pieces, and then we said, okay, where do you think we should fish here? We're staying around. We'd been fishing the Big Hole and was driving up to Missoula because I wanted to go to the Big Hole to try and catch a grayling. So we went many hours out of our way to do that, which I was fortunate enough to do. And then we stopped off in Hamilton, and I think we stayed around there. We had a really good breakfast, and then went to the fly shop, bought some bits and pieces, got some information. The guy said town water, which Hamilton, putting it in context, isn't very big at all. It's a one-street town, pretty much 2 streets off the side. Right. And the guy said fish the town water. We fished the town water, thinking perhaps he didn't want us to fish the honey holes. And it turned out it was absolutely fantastic. And it was good. He put us in the right spot. But there was a black bear there, and I remember that one particularly because it waded across the river towards us. And those things make wading in those strong rivers. The Bitterroot's not a small river, and it made it look pretty easy. And my friend just said to me, whatever you do, don't run. That will trigger that instinct in there. And we gave it a very wide berth. We just slowly walked away. And even if we're walking in where there's undergrowth, there's trees, the hay bear, just saying that nice and loudly. And I've seen them on a number of occasions, but thankfully, touch wood, we've had no close calls with that. I know I was on the Northumberland and saw one actually not a million miles away. But I think as long as you give them plenty of warning, and if they've got youngsters, don't get between them, I think is the thing, isn't it? But you know, it is one of those things. I think the encounters are not that great, are they? And I think you're probably more likely to be stung by a bee and injured rather than a grizzly, but it keeps you on your mettle, doesn't it? And keeps you engaged the whole time.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you probably run into rattlers also in Montana. I mean, in those grassy banks, you got to watch out where you put your hand.
Bears don't bother me. It's the snakes. I scream if I see snakes. It's the snakes I'm really frightened of, and I hear them. And, you know, we see all sorts of stuff. And it's one of those typical things. If you look for them, you see them. And so I see them all the time. And so I try and steer very clear. And if it looks dicey to me, I'll get in the river, and I'm anything but snakes. That's the only thing I'm petrified of. But
yeah. I remember one of those days we were fishing the Missouri, and we were looking for hoppers to chum them. So we started picking up hoppers in the grass, and one of those windy days, which is great days for fishing hoppers. And I just started picking up hoppers, and all of a sudden Don says, "Don't move." I didn't hear anything, but I think one of those rattlers just was hanging around. So as an ignorant fisherman from Europe, you gotta know that there are probably possibilities of things you'll rarely encounter in Europe, but out there it's a possibility. Yeah, you gotta know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, there's one we've been talking over an hour now, and I could talk a whole lot more. One of the things I wanted to touch on again was your fly tying, and particularly as we'd talked about fly shops and stuff. And the question I wanted to ask you is, have you ever tied commercially?
Yeah. One of my friends, Wayne Llewellyn, arranged a little order for me back in the college days. And I wanted to get one of those brand new Sage RPL fly rods, which just came out in 1988 or something like that. And he said, if you just finish this order, then you might be able to get one of those rods. Well, boy, fly tying as work, it's real tough job. I mean, fly tying is all of a sudden not fun anymore. I think I stopped at around, I think I had to tie 12 dozens or something. No, 120 dozen. I don't remember. I think I stopped halfway, and I just said, take the flies, just see what you can pay me for. And I never ask for another commercial fly tying adventure, because it's a hell of a job. I mean, what I did was I counted back. I need to tie so many flies in so many months, and I calculate how many flies do I have to tie in a week, how many flies do I have to tie in a day. It starts with like four flies a day, and one day you said, "Oh, I'll just skip today." Well, 4 days in a day becomes 5 flies in a day. Oh, I'll have some fun in the weekend. And all of a sudden you have to tie 20 flies in a day, which is basically about 3 hours behind the vise. And it just becomes a real pain in the behind. And yeah, I'm really, I have a lot of respect for people who do tying for a living. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's no way I would. Well, I'm not even remotely good enough. So I've tried to support these guys who are tying fabulous flies and enjoy using them as well. We're going to start winding up now, Jay. If we've talked about where you love to fish in Germany, and we've circled around Montana because it's just such a wonderful destination. Do you have some places that you would love to go visit to cast a fly?
Oh boy. I think I haven't really touched anything in the possibilities we all fly fishing got these days. I mean, I haven't touched saltwater fly fishing, which is a whole new game on its own. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and they cost a lot of money, I heard, because you have to stay in lodges on remote islands and so on. For me personally, I think I got 2 little destinations I would like to try in the future. Is Patagonia, with all those amazing rivers with amazing backgrounds I've seen in magazines. And another one is New Zealand. I got a friend down there. He tells me to come over, but it's having a little family. That's not an easy task to do. Besides distance, it's you got to stay there. I think 4 or 5 weeks to really enjoy the possibilities. And those 2 destinations I think would be my top 2 destinations I would like to go before I go to the endless possibilities of fly fishing up there.
Nice. And even Patagonia.
How about you?
Well, I'm sort of kind of with you. I've been lucky enough to fish in New Zealand, which was great. And like you say, the distance, I think even Patagonia, I've looked at it, or Chile, and even the logistics of getting there is quite a trip. I've always wanted to fish in somewhere like Bhutan. That really interests me. And looking at some of the places that you may not necessarily look, I've heard there's no way I'm going there, but given the current background, but in Persia as well, there are trout streams there. That's obviously not ever going to happen. But some of these not so well known places, I believe there's some in Turkey. And looking for some of these sort of not so well discovered. And you mentioned the Pyrenees earlier, and I managed to fish up that way 3-4 years ago and absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic fun. Crystal clear rivers, plus barbel where we were fishing. And that was great fun. And I'm told the barbel, I was catching them on nymphs, but I would really, really like to catch a barbel on a dry fly in the Pyrenees as well. So
dry fly,
would be really, really cool in those streams there. So the problem is, Jay, there's so many rivers, so little time, isn't there? And that's what makes it difficult. But it's been absolutely fabulous to talk with you. It was everything I hoped this conversation would be. If you are ever over here, you would be I'd love to fish with you. I love how you think about fishing. I love how you approach your fishing. I love the gear you're using as well. So we sing from the same hymn book with that as well. So I love that. You'd be most welcome. Do you have any social media? Do you have anything if people want to go and look at these lovely pictures of flies or the stuff that you write? Is there any way people can contact you or they can find you?
Yeah. Well, thank you first for inviting me. It was real fun. I too have entering the social media world pretty late because I thought, what am I supposed to do there? Tell about how wonderful my life is? That's the idea what most people have of social media, But I entered it because also many of my old friends, I got out of touch with them. I didn't have a clue whether they were alive or where did they move or whatever. And I found out that pretty big numbers of friends were out there on Facebook. So I signed up and I try to post there every once in a while. But they can find me at Facebook at J Lee. Unfortunately, there are a lot of J Lees out in the world. So if you say J Lee and I'm sure you'll be able to find me. Since recently, I also joined Instagram. I think it's J Lee 68, and that's about it. Yeah. Cool,
fantastic. Well, if I have love-hate with social media, and there's lots of many good things, but we wouldn't be chatting right now if it wasn't for it. So there's a good enough argument for it right now, and I sincerely hope that we'll get to cast a fly line together at some stage. It would be really, really cool.
That'd be wonderful, Pete.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, it's been lovely to chat with you. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast. Thank you for being a guest. J Lee, thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks very much indeed. Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this one. I hope you're enjoying this one. I hope you're enjoying the new magazine as well. So we're really pleased and proud with how this one's looking right now. So thank you for all the kind comments and words about it as well. That they really do mean a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time to write. As ever, there will be plenty more of the Fly Culture Podcast to look forward to very, very soon. Thanks for listening.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.